The Dwight Howard deal is done. Everyone's saying Lakers are great, and I jump Iguodala to Denver is the big move. Were any of our pure emotion, quick reactions accurate? When we dig into the numbers today on tip-off, boom, 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 boom. I'm 42 years old this weekend. Boom, boom, boom. That's a sad thing. Boom, 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 boom. And my father still calls me to tell me I need to clean up my office. Boom, 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 boom. So therefore, this is my semi-version of a cleaned-up office. Though I have to sit right here because I notice my garbage can is still showing. Boom, 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 boom. Shh. How are you? Kind of clean. I got a scanner. Oh, I got a scanner back here. I got a printer that's not working back here. It says that there's a paper jam. There's no paper jam. That thing hasn't worked in like a month, and I don't know what to do about it. I think to dispose it and buy a new one. Yeah, Dad told me I had to clean up my office. Hope you're good. The real thing that I should be showing every day is that right there. That is the kids' collection, and then Sundiata's shot. That right there is Sundiata's shot. All right, let's get to it. Is that too much? Did I show garbage? No. Okay, good. Hope everyone's good. Is anyone doing the Ultimate Challenge bike ride? Larry H. Miller, Tour of Utah Saturday? I'm trying to get in. I found someone to do it with me. I'm only to do that. I don't think I'm doing the 100-mile, 10,000 vertical Park City around over Alpine up to Snowbird. I'm not that good. But I might do up over into Alpine 70 some odd mile. If anyone's doing it, let me know. And I'm trying to. I decided too late. I have two other people I'm going with, and now as of right now, I'm not in. So maybe this is all mute. The reaction by everybody on every ESPN or written piece or Twitter on Dwight Howard trade. If you don't know it, Dwight Howard to the Lakers, Andre Iguodala to Philadelphia, from Philadelphia to Denver. Denver moves Al Harrington and Aaron Aflalo. The Lakers move Andrew Bynum to Philadelphia, and Orlando gets stuff. And really, it might be a trade, truly, other than Orlando, where the three other teams all got better and all make sense. But the initial reaction, pure emotion on everyone involved, is, oh my gosh, the Lakers are totally dominant. Kurt Rambis is saying they're the favorite to win the West. And my immediate reaction on Iguodala to Denver was like, that's the real move. And then emotion set aside, and let's dig in to the numbers. And it's the conclusion is that I would say the Lakers improved defensively, and the Nuggets have improved defensively, because Dwight Howard is the best defensive big in the NBA, and Andre Iguodala is the best defensive wing in the NBA. Yes, I know LeBron exists. But both of them, but that's it. The Lakers offensively are the same. Bynum's a little better than Dwight Howard offensively, largely because of free throw shooting. And the Nuggets are considerably less good offensively. Scott Hastings, former GM of 1320 KFan when I was the program director there, Pete Benedetti and Citadel Radio. What about Fareed? Fareed used about 9 possessions a night last year. I'd be surprised if he's ready to use 15 or 16 at a highly efficient level. Wilson Chandler is going to have to step up. But let's dig into what the Lakers have done. So they've added Dwight Howard and Steve Nash. They've rebuilt their team. And let me say this about the numbers analysis I'm doing here. I don't think it's the best. I'm not sure if somebody asked me if an NBA team, an assistant coach and I were talking the other day, and he asked me if an NBA team wanted to hire me and kind of would I do it. And I'm not sure that I believe that I'd want to put these numbers up on some GM's livelihood or things. But I think there's some real validity to what they're doing. And frankly, they have worked in every piece of trade analysis over the last 4 or 5 years. When I've done this, they have worked. Maybe the only time where they have been slightly off would be that the Jazz turned out to be a bit better offensively the year with Al Jefferson the first year after losing Boozer. But on the other end, that team didn't make the playoffs and did dive. There were a lot of things going on. Jerry retired, so that year's very hard to evaluate. But if you look at it that way, generally on the Chris Paul trade, the numbers showed a completely one-sided, game-changing event to who the Clippers were. On the Pau Gasol trade, that showed a game-changing, one-sided, complete change to who the Lakers are. However, I would say on the numbers do not show that on Dwight Howard to the Lakers, and it does not show that with Andre Iguodala to Denver at all. Let's dig into it for a second. Dwight Howard is a great defensive player, and the Lakers will be better defensively. But Andrew Bynum's not a slouch defensively. But there's no question that the Lakers should get better. And simply without even a lot of – the Lakers last year were 13th in the NBA defensively. Since ignoring last year, which was jacked up and Dwight was a mess, since 2006 to 2006-7 to 2010-11, the Magic were never worse than 6th in the NBA defensively with Dwight in the middle. I think it's pretty fair to assume that with Dwight in the middle, the Lakers get to be a top 5 defensive team. And coming from 13, that's a huge jump. That equates out, if they do that, that equates out to about 6 or 7 win increase in a season. And that's a lot. Okay? That's a lot. However, on the offensive end, I'm not sure there's a big difference. Bynum used the league possession at 1.02. Howard used it at 1.03. It's a minuscule difference. They both used the exact same possessions, about 20 a game. Howard's free throw shooting is catastrophically bad, which is why some of his numbers are down, but it also is a real problem. So you look at that and you say, they're better. But if you go back and look at the Lakers last year, they won a lot of games they shouldn't have won. They in a small sample size, skewed as a very lucky team, or they have some chutzpah and they were able to win some close games late. Their point differential was 1.4. The Thunder and the Spurs point differential was 7. The jump the Lakers have to make to get to the Spurs and the Thunder is bigger than adding Dwight Howard. Did the Lakers get better? Yes, they got better defensively, and they got better, noticeably better defensively. And they kept Gasol, which is amazing. But they are not the favorite in the West. The Thunder are still the favorite in the West. And I'm not entirely convinced why people think San Antonio is dead. They rolled to the Western Conference Finals. They were the dominant regular season team all year. And they lost to a Thunder team which matches up well against them and might be better than them. The Lakers have moved out of the mess of teams. Memphis, Denver, Clippers, Dallas last year, Utah, Minnesota walking into it. That group was all the exact same. The Lakers, despite their high-profile market and their high-profile player in Kobe Bryant, were not any better than the rest of those teams. And frankly, that showed in the playoffs. They have improved, but not enough to catch that. They have a 2-year window, this year and next year, with Gasol, with Kobe, with Nash, with Howard. I'm impressed because really the real story on the Lakers is they were done, and they were not a title contender. And these moves of Nash and Howard have brought them back in the mix. What people are missing because of emotion is that they are saying that the Lakers were a title contender who's become the favorite. That's just not even anywhere near accurate. They were nowhere near a title contender. So let's keep an eye on it. Howard, the other issue on Howard, there was a reason he didn't want to go to L.A. for a while. He and Kobe did not get along. The book on Dwight Howard in Orlando has always been too carefree, not very focused, and not improving. Ungodly skilled, but this was tipped off to me 4 or 5 years ago by people in Orlando. He's goofing. He doesn't take things that seriously. Is he really ready to play in that environment? I'm not sure Andrew Bynum was either. Bynum's a bizarre dude. The Lakers are better, but they're not dominant. And their whole thing is going to be what they improve defensively with Dwight Howard, which could be considerable. The other issue for the Lakers that everybody just wants to not talk about, it's like you're not allowed to talk about it. Kobe is a shadow of the player he once was and is fading at a pretty considerable rate. And I might have to pull up some numbers to show this to prove it to everybody. But Kobe last year used 30 possessions a game. He is is a little bit above the league average in using a possession, but he's not dominating at all. He scored 28 points a game because he used 30 possessions a night. Until the Lakers shift Kobe's 30 possessions down to 20, increase Gasol, increase Bynum, or now Howard, increase Nash. They're not great. They can't be great. So that's where the Lakers stand. Now the most interesting one for the numbers with me, and let me say this: I got a guy I've known for most of his life actually, who tweets me all the time, and he's great. And I mean, I've truly known this kid since he was coming to games with his older brother, who I'm very good friends with. Pat Howells tweets me, I agree with your numbers 100%, but Dwight Howard is much more dynamic, athletic, consistent, and imposing than Bynum, not in the stats. That actually is in the stats. Those kind of things actually are in stats. That shows up in stats. That's just, it's called effectiveness on the floor. And so therefore it does show up in stats. So I would just kind of caution. I always love the comment when people say, well, Bowler and I get into this all the time. When Bowler says, well, that's, I believe in I believe in effort and grit, and those aren't in the numbers. Actually, they should be. Because if your effort and grit is worth anything, then you get more rebounds and you make more plays, and it shows up in the stats. So, we'll see. By the way, the other one on the Lakers is, I understand what they're doing here, but if you assume that Dwight Howard re-signs for the max, next year in 13-14, the first year of the super tax, I have the Lakers at over $90 million for 6 players. And really, I'm just doing this back from the Bynum numbers. So if that's the case, then they'll owe over, I did this already, about $35 million of tax next year. And, that's 100 and, so 35, I'm doing the math in my head, but if they owe $35 million in tax and they're already at 92, that's like 125 million in salary for 6 players. I can't believe, I still think that there's a chance that they move Gasol here. And I actually think if the Jazz were willing to take 1 year back on Gasol and take away some of the flexibility they have and put Favors and Gasol together, woohoo! It's not that different than Howard and Gasol together, frankly. That might be something the Lakers are willing to do because with expiring contracts, they wouldn't have to deal with it. I don't know. I mean, the Jazz do have something there, possibly for the Lakers, and but that's just an astronomical amount of money for even the Lakers in this big market system. All right, let's go to the Nuggets. I love Andre Iguodala because he's one of the few players in the NBA that changes a game defensively. You know, really, the guy, Howard, I think favors Karolinko, Iguodala, LeBron, Kobe when he had it, but he doesn't have it anymore. There are very few players, there are more, but not many. There's probably 10 or 15 who impact games defensively. And for that reason, it's a big acquisition by the Nuggets. However, the two guys the Nuggets moved, Aaron Aflalo and Al Harrington, both were very good last year. Now, Scott Hastings, Nuggets broadcaster, tweeted me last night, hey, that's the system. Neither of them could do it beforehand. There might be something to that. Aflalo is one of the few players who've ever improved upon arriving at their new team. But he's continued to improve, and he was at a stage of his career where he'd improve. I think most of you know this. I don't fundamentally believe that players change based on teammates and performance. In the case of Al Harrington, it's not true. Al Harrington was better in 08-09 in New York than he was in Denver. He actually slipped a little bit upon coming to Denver. Not a great deal. Actually, pretty considerably. I would put him down as a guy who did slip, who actually his performance changed upon changing teams. It could be age, but it also just interestingly he just slipped. Most guys, stay pretty darn consistent to who they are. So Aflalo did not. He improved, but I think that was probably his natural projection as a player. He also increased his role from 5 possessions to 9 possessions to 11 possessions a game. Iguodala's defense is unbelievable. The 76ers were about 97 points per 100 possessions when he was on the floor and 103 when he was off. I mean, that's one of the biggest of any wing player in the NBA. And you go dig into synergy, and he's great. And Aflalo, who's thought of as defensively a good player, is not. In fact, the absolute opposite shows up. Denver was better defensively when he was off the floor. So that is really hard for me to put numbers on. I'm not quite good enough, but I would just say the Nuggets last year were 19th in the league defensively, right where we were. If they get to the top 10, offensively, they'll improve. They need to get to the top 10 offensively for this move. And I don't know, maybe with JaVale McGee and Andre Iguodala, they can do that and really become that kind of trapping George Karl Sonics style defense that he wants to. Because offensively, they've taken a huge step back. Iguodala used 13 possessions a game at .92 points per possession, right above league average, right actually about the same level Kobe did. The year prior, he used 15 possessions at the exact same rate, so it wasn't as though there was anything off about last year. Denver gives up Aflalo, who used 14 possessions a night last year, at 1.06 points per possession. It's really incredibly high. He had a huge year, did Aflalo. And really, if you go back to the year prior, was just as good the year prior. In fact, he slipped as did the rest of the league the year prior. But one year prior, he was, I'm pulling it up right now, Aflalo was 1.13 points per possession. There's nothing fluky about Aflalo's production. He's just become that good an offensive player. One of the better. 47% shooting, 40% from 3, 12% of his possessions going to the line, 15 points a game. They gave up a lot there. In fact, just that change from Aflalo to Iguodala on the offensive end loses you about 2 points a game. That comes out to about 5.4 points, 5.4 wins a year. couple that with the drop of Harrington. Everyone's saying Fried, but Fried used 10 possessions last year. It really comes down to me to Wilson Chandler, who had a terrible year last year. And so with all the travel with China and everything, you kind of have to go back to the year prior with Wilson Chandler, and he was pretty darn good that year. He's at .98 when the league average was .94. So that's pretty darn good. But he's not terrific. So Denver improves defensively a great deal, but they better improve it defensively because they've really hurt themselves offensively. Now, I have not dug into the Philadelphia research, but I will tell you this. If you simply go change offensively the Spencer Hawes possessions, which were only 9 a game. I don't know. Actually, that's 2 years ago. Sorry, let me find last year. I don't know how you find enough possessions here. But if you Spencer Hawes, just to put this in perspective for a second to understand, and they're going to have to just change the way they are. But if you take the Elton Brand 11 possessions and the Spencer Hawes 11 possessions to get Bynum's 22 possessions a game, I think everyone would probably agree that's probably the right way to do this. Okay, and you do that. Those two guys combined were at .92 last year. As we mentioned earlier in this, impressively, Bynum was 1.02. So that becomes a .1 differential for 22 possessions a game. Comes out to about 2.2 points per game better, which comes out to about 6 wins better than they were previously. Now, they lose an awful lot with Iggy on the wing, but maybe Bynum makes up for that. So I think every team got better, but I'm not convinced at all, really, that either of them altered the landscape of the NBA the way some people are saying. And the last one I would just leave you with, and this is, if the Jazz were to trade tomorrow, if the Jazz were to have pulled off a trade tomorrow for Derek Favors, okay, and we were to do this same analysis for Favors and assume that he would play, now this is big, assume he would play some 30 minutes a night, 35 minutes a night, and be on the floor in the place of some of these other players. I think what you would discover is that this defensive improvement that both the Lakers and the Nuggets are having would be had as well by the Jazz. Simply, if you just start to analyze, I'll do this very, very quickly. But Millsap, really by the numbers, Millsap would need to stay on the floor because Millsap had one of the best overall ratings of any player in the NBA last year. According to Basketball Value, he was, Nowitzki, Nash, Paul, and Millsap. Millsap was as valuable to any team. Pau Gasol was 6th, which is pretty darn important, the fact that the Lakers were able to hold on to him. If you simply go, now the one thing on Millsap is the team was less good when he was on the floor. Defensively, they were far better when he was on offensively. And if you were to go take, and I think these usually show who the worst defensive players are, if you kind of go look at it, and it has Brandon Jennings and Carlos Boozer and Drew Gooden and things like that. If you go find Derek Favors, defensively last year, the Jazz were when he was on the floor, they allowed 102.5, and when he was off the floor, they allowed 108.8. It's one of the 10 to 12 biggest differences in the NBA. It's right where Dwight Howard was with his difference defensively. And Taj Gibson instead of Carlos Boozer had that kind of impact. Thabo Sefolosha, Omer Askew had that kind of for Chicago. Gerald Wallace had that kind of in both his places. He's pretty darn good defensively. It makes sense. It matches up. So, with Derek Favors on the floor, now the Jazz offensively were far worse, and you'd be very concerned about that. And if you start to try to play around in points per possession, as we're doing here, and this now is getting excessively long, you will end up seeing similar. If we were doing the same analysis on the Jazz right now, you would see a dip. You'd have to say, okay, well, Millsap had 17 possessions and Jefferson had 20, both at .98 points per possession, and you're going to give Favors minutes, so you've got to pull those possessions from somewhere, and some of those possessions. And so now Favors goes up to 15 or 16 possessions at .9. You're going to, in those 9 possessions that the Jazz are moving, you're going to drop about .72 points per game. So you're going to lose a little there, but you should increase 4 or 5 defensive points and still get a good deal better if you do the analysis. The Favors play, numbers-wise, just putting Favors on the floor and limiting some of the time that Al and Paul are on the floor and putting Favors out there 35 minutes a night defensively increases the Jazz more so, frankly, than either of these two trades. Even if you take the or as much as, even if you take the offensive decline isn't as bad as what Denver just got. And frankly, the jump is bigger for Favors than Millsap and Jefferson. And then frankly, if you go put, and I'll do all this, Mo Williams in for Harris, you take a step back statistically. But if you put in Marvin Williams for Josh Howard and C.J. Miles, Randy Foye in there, you win 3 or 4 more games, and the Jazz actually now increase as much as any of these teams are. So huge stuff going on, a lot of fun to numbers analysis, and the only thing I would just leave you with, you're going to hear all the other stuff, you're going to feel all that way. This analysis is not bulletproof, but when it has shown huge fundamental changes in the past, and it doesn't on this deal. They got better. Denver, maybe. LA, yes. But both of them just on the defensive end, which is important. See ya.